It was supposed to be just another flight. The skies were calm, and passengers slowly filed into the aircraft, placing carry-ons into overhead compartments and buckling up for the journey from Boston to Los Angeles. Jordan Lewis, dressed in a tailored navy blazer and crisp white shirt, stepped aboard with his wife, Ayanna, beside him. She looked effortlessly elegant in a beige blazer and neat braids. Both looked young, in their early 30s, composed and quietly confident. Their presence turned a few heads, not because they were loud or flashy, but because they carried themselves with the kind of self-assurance that didn't beg for attention. They found their seats in row 14, Ayanna by the window, Jordan on the aisle. A few passengers already seated glanced their way, some offering polite smiles, others simply observing. Neither Jordan nor Ayanna noticed or minded. They were used to the stares. Today was their 5th wedding anniversary, and instead of a party or a grand trip abroad, they chose a quiet escape to LA, just the two of them, unplugged from the world. They'd booked first-class seats, of course. Comfort was a non-negotiable. As they settled in, Ayanna leaned her head on Jordan's shoulder. 5 years already, she whispered, smiling. 5 years, and you still put up with me, Jordan joked. She chuckled softly. I'd fly across the world with you 100 times over. They were interrupted by the sudden appearance of a flight attendant. Her uniform was sharp, her posture rigid, and her makeup perfectly set, crimson lipstick, neatly tied bun, eyes lined to precision. She looked every bit the part of authority in the skies. Her name tag read, C. Whitmore. She didn't smile. Excuse me, she said, tone clipped. Are you in the correct seats? Ayanna blinked, confused. Yes, these are our seats. The flight attendant raised an eyebrow and pulled out her tablet. Your names? Jordan and Ayanna exchanged a quick glance before answering. She typed into her device, scrolling with a frown. After a pause, she said, I see, but I had a report that you were seated here without confirmation. Ayanna's smile faded. We checked in properly. We have the confirmation emails if you need to see them. Jordan remained calm. Is there an issue? Miss Whitmore didn't answer the question directly. Please be prepared to move if necessary. I'll have to verify this with my supervisor. Then she walked off. Ayanna looked over at Jordan, bewildered. What just happened? He shook his head. I don't know, but this feels off. As the flight continued to board, a few passengers nearby began whispering, glancing over, then away. One young man a few rows behind Jordan leaned slightly forward, curiosity written across his face. Ayanna sat up straighter. You think this is about something else? Jordan didn't answer immediately. He looked toward the aisle where the attendant had disappeared. I've seen that look before, he said quietly. She reached for his hand, gently squeezing it. They didn't know it yet, but this flight would test far more than their patience. It would test how much dignity they could hold on to when someone tried to strip it away. 15 minutes passed. Jordan and Ayanna sat quietly, pretending to focus on their screens, but both were hyper-aware of the glances and whispers. The flight attendant, Ms. Whitmore, finally returned, but not alone. She was accompanied by a male supervisor, a burly man in a gray vest and name tag that read, Dennis, Cabin Operations. He wore a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. Good afternoon, Dennis said politely. We've received a report from our staff that there may be a seating error. Would you mind confirming your full names again? Jordan remained composed. Jordan Lewis. My wife is Ayanna Lewis. We are in the seats we purchased. Ayanna tapped her phone and pulled up the confirmation email. Right here, she said, showing it. Dennis studied the screen for a few seconds. Yes, that looks correct, he admitted, nodding. Then he glanced at Ms. Whitmore. Seems like a system glitch. But Miss Whitmore wasn't satisfied. I still find it strange, she said, almost under her breath, but loud enough for others to hear. They didn't exactly look like the typical premium customers. Ayanna's mouth dropped slightly. A quiet gasp came from the row behind them. Jordan leaned forward slowly, eyes focused on her. Excuse me? Dennis paled. Miss Whitmore, that's enough, he said quickly, but the damage was done. Ayanna turned toward Jordan, heart pounding. She could feel the weight of the entire cabin's attention now. The statement had been loaded, not just with doubt, but with something more poisonous, prejudice. I think we're done here, Jordan said coolly. Unless you'd like us to disembark? Dennis swallowed hard. No, sir, you're free to remain seated. Ms. Whitmore scoffed quietly and turned on her heels, disappearing down the aisle, but her words still floated in the air like turbulence. Ayanna looked over at Jordan. Did she really just say that? Yes, he said, his voice low and steady, but let's just see how far this goes. Little did she know, they hadn't even reached cruising altitude yet. As the plane lifted off the tarmac, the cabin's quiet hum returned. Most passengers tried to go back to their reading or movies, but an invisible tension lingered. Many had clearly witnessed the encounter. Some were sympathetic, others avoided eye contact altogether. A young black woman across the aisle met Ayanna's gaze and gave a small nod, as if to say, I saw. I understand. That gesture gave Ayanna a flicker of strength. Miss Whitmore, however, was now striding up and down the aisle, keeping an eye on the couple as if expecting trouble. Anytime Jordan reached for something, she glanced over. When Ayanna asked for a glass of water, it took nearly 25 minutes to arrive and was placed on the tray without a word. The couple stayed composed. Jordan flipped through emails. Ayanna scrolled through photos from their anniversary dinner. But behind their stillness was boiling frustration. I don't like being stared at like we don't belong here, Ayanna whispered. I know, Jordan replied, but this is where we turn discomfort into control. They exchanged a look, one built on years of knowing how to navigate rooms they weren't always welcomed in. And then Ayanna smirked. You think she knows who we are? Jordan chuckled under his breath. Definitely not, but she's going to find out soon. Midway through the flight, Ms. Whitmore returned once more. This time, she had a clipboard in hand. Her voice was louder than necessary, drawing more eyes. I need to remind passengers in rows 13 through 15 to remain in their seats and not disturb cabin crew unless it's an emergency. Jordan raised an eyebrow. Is that directed at us? She smiled, but it was tight, sarcastic, just standard safety protocol. Behind her, a man 2 rows ahead shook his head and muttered, This is ridiculous. Jordan calmly reached into his bag and took out a black leather case. He opened it slowly, revealing a gold-plated ID badge, one that bore the Sky America Airlines logo. Ms. Whitmore froze. Ayanna crossed her legs and said evenly, You've spent the past hour scrutinizing the 2 people who actually sign your paycheck. Jordan stood, holding up the badge. My name is Jordan Lewis. My wife and I are co-owners and board members of Sky America. You've been profiling and harassing us based on assumptions. That ends now. The cabin went silent. A few gasps, a few murmurs. Miss Whitmore's face went from authoritative red to paper white. Dennis returned moments later, visibly shaken. Mr. Lewis, we deeply apologize for the misunderstanding. Miss Whitmore will be removed from duty upon landing. We are taking this very seriously. Jordan nodded, but his voice was cool. Make sure you do, because next time, it won't be a quiet conversation. After Dennis escorted Miss Whitmore to the back of the aircraft, the tension began to dissipate. A few passengers came up to quietly apologize for not speaking up sooner. Others simply nodded with quiet respect. Ayanna leaned against Jordan. You okay? I'm fine, he said. But I'm tired of this cycle. You'd think wearing a suit would be enough. Owning the damn company would be enough. She squeezed his hand. Today it will be. Flight attendants not involved in the incident now treated them with kindness, offering snacks, drinks, and even an apology letter from the captain himself. But Jordan and Ayanna weren't seeking freebies. They wanted change. And by the time the plane began its descent, word had already reached Sky America headquarters. When the aircraft touched down, a company executive was already waiting at the gate. He approached the couple with a deep bow of the head. Mr. and Mrs. Lewis, we are so sorry. Miss Whitmore has been suspended pending further review, but after today's incident and her history of complaints, she will no longer be employed with us. Jordan looked him in the eye. Make sure this becomes a training opportunity. She wasn't just rude, she exposed a flaw in our culture. That needs fixing. Ayanna added, start teaching staff that not all customers look like the stereotype, and that power doesn't always wear the same skin. The executive nodded. We will. Thank you for showing us how far we still have to go. The story didn't stay on the plane. One passenger had filmed the exchange. Within hours, the video went viral. CEO of Airline called out by own staff for not looking like he belongs. Public opinion was swift and strong. Comments flooded in praising Jordan and Ayanna for their composure and dignity. Others called for major reforms in customer service practices. By the next day, Jordan's inbox was full, with messages from strangers, civil rights groups, and executives across industries. Change had begun, and it wasn't going back. A week later, Jordan and Ayanna returned to that same aircraft. This time they were greeted with warm smiles, respectful staff, and an announcement by the pilot thanking them for their leadership. In that moment, they weren't just flying, they were flying above what tried to hold them down. Ayanna looked out the window, sun glinting off the clouds. "Funny how one flight can reveal so much," she said. Jordan nodded. It wasn't just a flight, it was a reminder that silence is never an option, and dignity always deserves a seat.